Hi, everybody. Lovely to see you. Welcome to Technique Tuesday. My name is Ali Board, and I am currently broadcasting live from my studio on the south coast of the UK. You are all very welcome indeed. It's good to be back. I've just had a bit of a break, had a holiday. Wasn't a relaxing holiday, I have to say. I did run about like a lunatic, but it was lovely to have a break, and I am all raring to go to be back. So just in case you've not tuned in to a Technique Tuesday broadcast before, because you might be watching this on catch up as opposed to live, the idea of Technique Tuesday is that I will share something with you, whether that's some techniques or some materials, or we'll perhaps discuss a theme. And we make our way through the demonstration. Those people who are watching live get to ask questions, get to make comments. I can see your comments coming in. Lots of you in the room today. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy days. And the idea is that I can answer your artistic questions, or perhaps point you in that if I can't answer them, then perhaps point you in the direction of somebody who may be able to. But you get the opportunity to chat to each other as well. Now, if you are watching this on catch up, that live chat is available as a playback. You can just bring that up into your screen and you can see what people were talking about. But perhaps you're watching it on my website, in which case leave me a comment, send me a little wave and send me a hello so that I know that you are watching. There's no one else in the studio that helps me with these. It's just me clicking away with my technology and my mouse and doing a bit of demonstrating as I go along. So sometimes you just have to bear with me. Sometimes there's clucks and barks and neighs in the background, but all that does is prove to you that it is me, it is live, no AI here, just good old authentic me. Now, I have some good mornings to say to people. Ali, good morning. Rosie, bonjour. Barbara, Anne, who else have we got? Teresa, Lindsay, Rabina, all lovely to have you here. If you fancy popping up and saying hello, I will give you a shout out if I can. Now, at the moment, if just in case you're watching this on catch up, it is October. We are right in the middle of our autumn colours in the UK now. And so I thought it would be an idea to have a theme of the month, which I've called Kingdom of Rust. Now, I've named it that for numerous reasons. One, because I wanted to encompass all sorts of textures that sort of fell into that category. But also because if you know me well, then you know that I love my music. And actually, Kingdom of Rust is the title of a Doves song, which I love very dearly indeed. And I never miss an opportunity to pay homage to some of the people that inspire me along the way. So what is it that we are going to look at today? We're going to be looking at Speckle, Spatter and Shred today. And those are three terms that I use, some more than others, but they're terms that I use in my work to describe some of the textures that I apply to my work. It isn't always watercolor. We're going to sort of dip in and out of all sorts of mediums today, but they're all things that can help you to describe that texture, whether that be rust, or maybe it's something in a landscape, maybe it's stone, maybe it's the texture on an animal, all of those kind of things. So just before we pop over, I just got a couple more hellos to say. Val, good morning. Hilary, good morning to you too. Lots of people in the room, which is awesome. Thank you very much. So I'll take you to that overhead camera and I'll show you a painting that I did as a tutorial, which has gone out on my website this month, which I have called Old Timer. And this is the painting that I did. This is mainly watercolor with a few mixed media things thrown in there for good measure. But this is the kind of texture that I am talking about on here, where I'm trying to describe metal, but it's metal that is old, that has some patina to it, or that has an actual physical texture to it, all of those kind of things. So like I said, we're looking at speckle, spatter and shred. But one of the first things that I want to talk about is kind of the difference between those, because I use those descriptions in a very specific way. Let me take the second one of those first. So spatter. Now, I know a lot of people call it splatter, but I don't. Just in case English isn't your first language when you're watching this, I know that that can be terribly confusing. So technically, splatter, so with an L in it, is a very large kind of a way of putting down large textural bits. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. I don't actually call it splatter, I call it speckle, but we'll get to all of that. Spatter is much smaller, much finer. I would call this spatter, which is why I've got this painting here for you. So to just recap, splatter are those kind of big passes of colour. Spatter is small, but we're going to be looking at speckle first. I'm going to do you an egg because it seemed to sort of sum it up. I'm going to be looking at spatter from the point of view of how do I get a texture like this. And I'm also going to, if we have time, I'm going to look at shred as well, which is more of a physical thing, more sort of particles of either paint or scraping something into it. So I hope that makes sense. But let's deal first with speckle. So this is a slightly longer demonstration. I've got a few scraps of watercolour here to play with. Let's just, as you can see, this bit of paper is a little bit marked. I'm going to make it smaller so that it's more manageable. This paper that I'm using today is Fabriano Artistico. I'm using it because Fabriano Artistico is my go-to paint, really. It is the paint. Oh, you can tell I've had a holiday. Paper, because it is one of those papers that will do pretty much everything. I can rely on it. I can predict what's going to happen on it. It's not going to give me too many surprises. And so it becomes a real staple paper for me. Saunders Waterford is an alternative to that. I've just kind of shied away from using Saunders Waterford myself because I'm trying very hard to use materials that don't have any animal products in them. And Saunders Waterford has gelatin in it, and Fabriano Artistico has a synthetic gelatin in it. And the gelatin is the thing that sizes the paper so that you can paint on it and it doesn't act like blotting paper. So I hope that that gives you a bit of an insight into why I use the papers that I do. But if you have any questions, of course, put them into the chat and I will be happy to answer them. So first things first, let us draw out our egg shape. I was inspired to do the speckle part of today from one of my chickens, the lovely Dottie, who you may have seen on my social media. And Dottie is a combination of two different sorts of hen. She's a hybrid, and she lays the most beautiful eggs, which are a very kind of pale bluey green. They always have a point on them, like I'm drawing here, and they have little brown speckled marks on it because she's called Dottie for a reason. Not only does she lay speckled eggs, but she's also pretty speckled herself in black and white. She's what's known as a Mars bar chicken because she's a hybrid of a Moran and a leg bar. And I just think any chicken that is classified and named after a chocolate bar is good enough for me. So there's my egg shape with a little point at the top, looking at kind of using Dottie's egg shape as inspiration. Now I'm going to do something a little bit unusual on this today. I'm going to mask it out, but I'm going to mask out the outside of it as opposed to the inside of it. And if you want to see more about masking fluid and why I use the combinations that I do, then there's a previous Technique Tuesday that you can go back. I can't remember what month it is, maybe February, something like that of this year, where you can go back and you can watch all of my thoughts on masking fluid and, like I said, why I use the combinations that I do. I'm going to do it in an old-fashioned way today. So I've got a little bar of soap. And I've got an old nylon brush that I use for masking out. And so I'm going to wet the brush and I'm going to rub it backwards and forwards into this bar of soap. The idea being that I'm going to coat the bristles with the soap so that when I use the masking fluid on it and I go to wash it out, it's going to come off nice and cleanly. So I'm rolling the bristles in that bar of soap. This is just a little bar of soap that I picked up when I stayed somewhere, just a little hotel bar. Is very useful for things like this. If you don't ever stay any places like that, then if you know somebody that does, swipe one from them the next time that you know they're staying somewhere. So I've wiped it in the soap. Now what I need to do, I've just got to grab myself some kitchen roll from over here. I think I've got everything. It's amazing how a week off on holiday makes your brain shut down and you forget what it is that you need for a Technique Tuesday. So I'm going to dry that off. I don't want to remove the soap. I just don't want it to make a lather when I stick it into the masking fluid in a minute. I think that's going to be okay. And then I'm going to use my masking fluid. I'm using the Schminker masking fluid. It sort of turns out that it's becoming one of my favourites, not only because it lasts a lot longer in the bottle than some of them. It's a little bit thicker than normal. So if you prefer a runnier one, you may want to go for something like the sort of blue kinds that you can get, or the more traditional looking masking fluids. I absolutely understand that, but because I'm applying it with a brush today, I don't think it's going to give me too much trouble. Now, the disadvantage of using a white masking fluid is, of course, I'm working on white paper. So that's not helpful, is it? But I'm looking across it so that I can see the shine on it. And I'm painting around my shape because with all the things that I'm going to do to it in a minute, I'm going to want to have a nice clean edge. Also, the reason that I'm using a brush so that I get an interesting sharp line all the way round. I don't need to do all of the piece of paper. I'm going to take care of that in another way in a minute, but I'm applying it all the way round. You can possibly, yeah, there you go. You can just see the shine of it going on there, coming around the bottom. I'm thinning it out as well. I'm trying to not leave lumps in it for no other reason that I want it to dry quite quickly. So coming around the base into here. And as always, when I've got to be neat and tidy, I struggle to talk and do it at the same time. Now, the masking fluid is going to remove a little bit of the graphite, but I'm hoping that that will actually stand me in good stead, that I'll get a nice crisp edge to my egg. And obviously the point of this isn't really to discuss masking fluid. You just got a bit of an added bonus. The point of this is to really discuss how to do speckle texture for my speckledy egg. Now that brush is going to go into the water. You don't really want to put it in your normal pot of water because then you've got masking fluid in the water, which maybe you don't want on your normal brushes. So what I'm going to do here is I've got my pot of water and I've got one of these, which is a little sauce pot, you know, like you kind of get ketchup in fast food restaurants. So I'm going to pop a little bit of water into that sauce pot and wash my brush out in there. Really useful, these sauce pots are, for being able to decant bits of ink or bits of colour or even bits of masking fluid. So we'll give it a good old wash. You can see there how it makes the water very cloudy, and I don't really want that on my best brushes. So that can go to one side. Let's give the brush a really good dry on the kitchen roll. I think it probably needs another swill around in the water. Let's do that. And all of this time that I'm cleaning, this of course is drying. So I'm helping myself out. What's that on the end of my brush? I think that's just a few dregs of masking fluid. And then I can give it a really good clean because the soap has just sloughed off the masking fluid from it, and then that brush can go back in my box and it lives to fight another day. So how dry are we doing here? Not too bad at all. Already got a dog hair in it this morning. Marvellous. That's what we like to see. Same old, same old. And then I'm going to mask off the rest of my egg with bits of kitchen roll. And I can weight those down with my push pins, my magnetic push pins in some places, or you could use a little bit of masking tape in others. So we'll get that. So all I need to do is butt the kitchen roll up to where the masking fluid is. All this is doing is preserving the white of my paper. Possibly, let's do that there, and then I'll just be careful with the bit at the bottom. So that's all prepared and all good to go. Now what I need to do is to put together a colour to paint in the main part of my egg. As you can see, haven't cleaned my palette recently, so there's something even more authentic as we go along. Possibly need to give it a bit of a clean. Let's just grab a little bit of kitchen roll. Let's make a clean area down in here, so we can mix up a nice fresh colour. Let's get rid of all the dregs in the nooks and crannies. You don't see me mix colours on a palette very often because I actually prefer to mix them on the paper, just because I know me very well and I know what a faffer I am. And therefore, if I mix them on the paper, I make less marks. I don't tend to get muddy colours that way. But today is going to require a bit of mixing because I want to combine two things. I want to combine some white gouache. So this is my brand of white gouache. This is titanium white over here. And again, pretty tricky to see when it's on the paper. I'm not after it being opaque. I just want the white to be a carrier and to pastelize some of the colours that I'm going to mix in. So you might not be able to see it too clearly on the palette, and I might need some more of it, but it's definitely there. Let's give that brush a rinse out. Now, I'm going to start with my cobalt turquoise because I want that, as much as it is a chicken egg, I want that kind of duck egg blue. So I'm going to start with my cobalt turquoise and see how that reacts with the white gouache. So let's get that in. So I know what Dottie's eggs look like, and that is very blue. It needs some green going on in there as well. So we'll wash that out, and into that I'll add, it's sort of almost there, but not quite. I'll add a little bit of my foliage green. I don't really want to overdo this. So that's better. It's kind of almost there. Maybe I've pushed it a little bit too far with the green. I was concerned about how much green I was putting down. So let's add a bit more turquoise back in. Okay, that's better. That is closer to what I know, but it's not pale enough. So let's go back into the white gouache. Even my gouache, look, I have in pan. This is an extra large pan that I squeeze my gouache out into just because I use so much of it on a daily basis. And it still fits in my box. There we go. That's more like it. That's a dotty egg colour. And so straight away, without kind of any messing around, I'm going to go back in and paint my egg in that colour. Actually, that is perfect dotty egg colour. I'm going to add a bit of water into that so that I get kind of a bit of variegation going on. And I'm also... Shall I add a bit more of that? Oh, it's settled on my palette as well. Look at that. Isn't that interesting? I think we'll add a slightly stronger version of it in a couple of places so that my egg has the opportunity to look a little three-dimensional. And yes, I probably could have tidied my graphite lines up a little bit, but I haven't. So we're experimenting with our speckle technique today, so I'm not overly concerned about it. What I will do is, while that's still damp, fortuitously, I've got what I call palette grey. Morning, Jilly, going on over here, and I think that might work really well. I can guess what this is. I'm pretty sure this is probably a mix of Prussian blue and something else, but we'll call it palette grey, those kind of greys that lurk in the corners of your palette. And I have a feeling, whilst this is still wet, if I add a little bit of it to the base, just in here, maybe we'll add a tiny bit of shadow on one edge as well. We've got the opportunity for this to look a little more three-dimensional, haven't we? So if I use my brush in there to just agitate that into that kind of wet gouache mix, then I've got a slightly more three-dimensional thing going on. Right, I need to give that dry. Don't forget, if you've got any questions, to get them into the chat. So I'm just wafting the heat gun at it, trying to multitask as well and find something else that I need at the same time. So give it a good old dry. Still not quite there. I probably should dry it from the back as well, but it's all pinned down now. There we go. So it's dried quite nicely, possibly not as dry as it could be. I have a feeling that it could be a little bit drier, but for the purposes of today's little experiment, I think it's going to be fine. And then to speckle on top of it, Dottie's speckles are a sort of a browny grey, but I also thought for the purposes of today that it would be good to mix up our media a little bit. And so I've got a fountain pen ink here. Ink is something I use an awful lot of. I love to combine ink and watercolour together. Fountain pen ink is definitely one of my favourites because I can diffuse it and move it and do all sorts of things with it. So I've got this. Now I'm not sure if it's going to be quite the right colour. It might be too strong as it is. So I might need to add a bit of water to it. And Dottie has little brown dots on her eggs, but she also has these sort of flashes of brown as well. They vary throughout the laying year. And so I thought that this would be an interesting, but what we're after is we're not just after tiny little dots, we're after sort of bigger speckles, a splatter as opposed to a spatter. That's what I'm after, but we'll see how we get on with it. So the first thing I'm going to do, just going to pour away this bit of masking fluidy water and clean that out. I know that these pots, I've got hundreds of these on the shelves, but I'm still a frugal creature. Actually, the bottom of that, okay, it might be all right. I've got two different sorts of these actually, just to share with you. I've got these ones, which are the sort of the normal kind. And then I also found on my travels, I found this sort as well, which seem to have a coating on the inside. The only thing that worries me is how recyclable these are. But I think they stand up to liquid a little better. I've got a bit of research to do on that. Let's switch to one of these because it means that you get to see them as well. So let's open the bottle of ink and try very, very hard to not send it flying everywhere. And I'm going to reach in my box of tools, things that you might not necessarily find. I'm going to reach into this for my syringe because it's much easier. You could use a pipette as well, but I happen, as you can imagine, with a lot of animals, I have a lot of these in the animal cupboard. I'm just going to draw up a little bit of ink. I probably won't need nearly that much, and deposit it in that. It's a nice clean way of doing it too. So we'll do that. And first things first, I want to test how that colour is kind of looking in terms of, yeah, it's a nice rich brown, which is definitely the sort of brown that I get on bits of Dottie's eggs. But I'm thinking that I might mix a little bit, just a little tiny bit of black gouache in with it so that I get more of a grey brown. So let's mix that in. This is all very experimental and always in the planning of Technique Tuesday. That's better, little browner. I tend not to overdo my planning so that you can hear my thought process out loud. So all of those questions that we ask ourselves as we are experimenting, you get to hear quite how my brain works. Now into that, I'm going to add a little bit of white just to make it slightly more opaque, to make it slightly grayer, and also to prove that you can mix all these things together. Anything that's water soluble, you can mix together. So you can mix ink and watercolour and acrylic and all of those types of things together to get either the consistency or the colour or the finish that you want out of it. Now that is a much, much better colour, I think. Let's test it. Yeah, that's much better. So first things first, and I will revise this in a second, I want a little bit of spatter. And the brush that you use or the tool that you use will determine the size of the spatter that you get. And so I don't want big spatter. I want quite little spatter. Now, Lindsay's just asked me a question. Is that sepia ink, Ali? If I'd had sepia, Lindsay, I think it would have been better. This is very unhelpful. This is just called brown. It is a Schaefer fountain pen ink. So it's probably more like a sort of walnutty colour than it is sepia. I think if I'd had sepia, sepia might have been a bit too grey. And you know me, a bit of a control freak. I like to be able to control the colour that's on my brush. And just in case, I know some of you haven't interacted on YouTube before, just in case you're wondering why you have a little crown, the more you comment on my broadcasts, the crowns that you get. So we have like a first, a second and a third. That's why those crowns are there, just in case. I know some of you are going, why have I suddenly got a crown next to my name? So I'm going to fill this brush up with that colour, a smaller brush, so I should get a fine spatter, and I'm going to tap it over the top of my pencil. Now again, the distance makes a difference. I don't want to hit it with my pencil because then the spatter will go up before it goes down. I want to be able to make sure I know where I'm aiming this for. And I want to do it from quite high so that then it will rain down on the surface and I'll get a nice fine finish. Anne is asking, would acrylic ink or drawing inks work? Yes, absolutely, completely and utterly. Experiment with what you've got before you commit to a final piece. So there we've got that tiny little bit, look, of that spatter. Just enough to start to make it look like one of Dottie's eggs. I'm going to give that a dry. So let's get it on a low setting. And we'll give that a bit of a dry. There we go. I might add more of that, but this is very much an exercise in less is more. And then I want this speckle, this kind of, I don't want it all just dots. I want some other shapes out of it as well, which requires a different action for application and a slightly different consistency. Now that, despite how runny that is, I know from past experience that when I apply it, it needs to be as runny as possible. And yes, absolutely, Rosie, when I've got to the end of it, I'll pop it in the close-up for you. So I'm going to add some water to this to thin it out, to make it as liquid as I possibly can. And this is where you want to make sure that the rest of your workspace is either free from any clutter, or you care about it a bit less. And actually, I'm going to back right away from my board and from my camera. And although you can't see me, I'm actually standing up right now because I want a different action. I'm not trying to tap my brush so that I get a fine thing. I want to really chuck it at the surface. I'm not going to touch it. I just want to flick it. And there's the speckled kind of quality that I'm after. So can you see that action of literally throwing? I have missed my bit of masking fluid, so I need to take care of that in a minute. Has made a very different texture on the surface. Now, while that's wet and while I've still got the opportunity to do a bit of mopping, I potentially need to take care, even though I masked it off, look, still such a messy article. Let's wet those areas and see if I can mop it up. It has stained it a bit, but let's not worry about that too much, shall we? I thought I was doing such a good job. And then here in places, I'm going to add a bit of water to that speckle so that we get some interesting marks and some variegation against the lovely kind of greeny blue in the background. So I'm pleased with that. So can you see the difference? I'll go over the spatter again in a second, but in fact, I might do you a little bit of a bonus technique for cleaning it up in a minute. But can you see just the nature of the application, just the way that I actually threw the colour at that piece of paper gives you that very different effect. There's a lovely lady who's just popped up in the chat who I think is called Robin. Good morning. She says that she's new and it's 3:33 a.m. Okay. Thank you very much for tuning in, and do let me know where you are watching from. Amazing. Lovely for you to join us. Right, so I've got that. Need to give that a really good old dry. Oh my goodness, Robin is in Idaho. So what I need to be very aware of now is I don't want there to be any wet colour on the masking fluid, because I'm going to rub that masking fluid away in a second. And then let's do a bit of the paper dance. I'm going to show you it in close-up before I take the masking fluid off, where it looks very, very messy indeed. And then we'll give it a really good tidy up, and always looks better, doesn't it, when you've taken the masking fluid away and you can see the results. Robin, I'm not surprised that coffee is calling you. Have one for us as well, my lovely. Right, so that's done. Now I need to take the masking fluid away. And to do that, I'm going to use a masking fluid eraser like this one, as you can see. This is very well used, just because for me, this is the cleanest, tidiest way of doing this. So I'm going to pull that masking fluid away from the surface. The Schminke masking fluid tends to fracture rather than come away in sort of clean peelable strips, but it still does exactly the same job. And then I might just, because I've got a bit of overspill here and there, I might just dash across the studio to see if I can find something else that will show you potentially how I would take care of these extra marks. But we'll see if we can do that in a second. Let's clean it up first with the masking fluid eraser. If you've not seen a masking fluid eraser before, they are available on my website, www.learningtopaint.co.uk, as are the watercolour paints that I am using today. I haven't got any ink at the moment, but we're slowly building the website up to be a nice place where you can buy the materials that I use. Now, so that's much cleaner and tidier, apart from some slightly rubbish marks around the edge, which is my own fault. So what I'm going to do is, you'll still be able to hear me, but I am going to just dash across the studio to see if I can find my Milton sterilising fluid. Just got to rearrange the furniture a little bit. And I want Milton sterilising fluid. Yeah, Rosie's already guessed. That's really funny. I want my sterilising fluid to see if I can lift some of these extra overspill marks. It doesn't work on watercolour. Milton won't take watercolour away, but it will potentially take ink away. Now, of course, if you remember, I put a tiny bit of gouache in with this as well, so I'm not sure if it's going to work, but it's worth an experiment, isn't it? Anne is saying that she's not sure she would be safe or anything else in close proximity if you do speckling. Yes, I know exactly what you mean. Most of the things that I own, including the dog and my clothes, are usually covered in it. I think the dogs have got to know that they need to run for the hills whenever I do this. So let's clear the decks a little bit, and I put some Milton into that pot. Now, you shouldn't really use your best brushes for this, so let me reach for something that I don't particularly use on a regular basis. You can add water to it. I might just add the tiniest touch of water into that Milton. And let's see if I can lift some of these smudges away. So I'm going to paint the Milton on. It doesn't always work because, like I said, I have got a bit of gouache in here as well. And then if I take some water to that as well. So weirdly, you can probably see, I'll show you it in the close-up in a minute as well, that actually just this sort of hint of the gouache is left behind. Can you see that? Just that little bit of grey makes all the difference. Let's do the same thing to the base. So the Milton goes down. It takes care of that kind of thin area immediately where I'd managed to blend it out a little bit. And then if I take some water on top of that and get my kitchen roll involved, then I can potentially blot up the rest of it. Got a little bit of a mark down here at the bottom as well. Now, there's other things that we can do to that, and other things just for my own artistic integrity to finish it off. So let's give that a bit of a dry. You'll notice as well that those marks do get paler as they dry. And then we'll pop a little bit of a shadow in just because we can. So let's go back to, oh, so many things, stuff everywhere. We'll go back to this palette grey so that we can pop a bit of a shadow in. Now, Milton doesn't affect watercolour, doesn't affect gouache, it only affects ink. So it will definitely lift fountain pen ink. Actually saying that, it doesn't work on acrylic ink, but it works on fountain pen ink, it works on brusho, any of those kind of things that are dye-based as opposed to being pigment-based. So let's stick a shadow in underneath here so that our dotty egg looks like, excuse me, it's actually sitting on something. So we'll take, I think I've still got a bit of masking fluid on there. So we'll take that dark shadow and then we'll do something with it. We'll use a blending out technique to suggest that it's balancing. I don't think one of Dottie's eggs would balance like this, if I'm honest, but at least it makes it look solid. So we'll go in, and it's got that kind of nice watercolory effect to it now too. So it's sitting on a surface. Let's pull that shadow up into the base of the egg as well, so that we get that kind of delicious moment where we're not sure where egg stops and table starts. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to increase that kind of highlight onto the surface. Oh, hello, Julie. Good evening. Lovely to have you. Lovely to have you here. Gosh, we are international today. We've got Idaho, we've got Australia, we've got France. Got it all going on. Thank you very much for joining me. So I'm going to take this bit of white gouache in here, and I'm going to add just the faintest little touch of a highlight onto the egg. Let's pop another little one up here on the top as well. So this, just to recap, this is a combination of both Spatter and Speckle. Spatter being that very fine distribution of paint, and Speckle being the slightly kind of larger, more forceful, more demonstrative way of putting it across. So I'll show you that again. Actually, let's just quickly show you in the close-up, and then I'll show you that again later on. There's that shadow going on underneath. Quite pleased with that. Like the way that we've got this variation in mark making. If you've ever attended any of my workshops at all, you'll know I bang on constantly about mark making and being able to find ways of creating different textures on the surface. It's incredibly important to your work, as important as color mixing, as important as tone, as important as shape and line and all of those kind of things. So hopefully that's a nice little illustration of how you can get some different marks. Now, a couple of things that I wanted to do just to conclude today is to show you a couple of ways that you can get spatter onto your surface, bit of revision and some tools as well. And then we'll have a very, very quick look at shred, which I'm going to use near color to show you. And then I'm hoping that that will give you a nice little repertoire of techniques for your next rusty project. So you will have seen me do it on the egg, but let's show you it again. So spatter is more deliberate. I tend to say that speckling, where I'm really throwing the paint at the paper, is kind of, you can argue it both ways really. It's deliberate from the sense that you are putting the colour on, but the way that the colour manifests itself is quite organic, whereas spatter is organic because you can't control it really finitely, but you can make it directional. It's just that the way that the pattern emerges, you could probably describe as organic. So this is my favourite way of doing it. Let's use the bit of ink that I've got left over. so that I don't waste anything. So just to recap, this is the way that I do it. I have something in my non-dominant hand, like the handle of a brush or a pencil or something like that. And I tap the brush that is full of colour over the top of it. And depending on how liquid your colour is, or how far away or how close to you are, if I just see, if I dab that off so that I've got very little on there and I whack a bit harder, look, you can alter the style of the pattern that you're getting. Okay. It is completely changeable. It isn't necessarily as random as the speckling is. Of course, you don't just have to do it in that way. There's other ways that you can do it. A toothbrush is a really effective way of doing it. There's just a bit of a knack to it. So I'm going to fill my toothbrush with ink, and really the only way that you can do that is by dipping the bristles in it. But it's really important, and this is the thing that not very many people tell you. If I went straight in with that and I held it and I ran my thumb or whatever it is that I'm going to do through that, I'd probably get big drops, because at the moment the liquid is right at the tip of the bristles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to whack the back of my toothbrush onto my board, and you can see straight away how the colour has started to fall into the bristles. That means it's been distributed much better across the bristles. And then what I do is, you can do this in a number of ways. And Robin has said that she's tried to use a toothbrush before and ended up with it in her face. And yes, I'd be lying if I said that hadn't happened to me, Robin. So what I do, you've got to remember that it's going to shoot out the front of your toothbrush. So however you pull back through the bristles, it's going to fire out of the end. So what I do is put my hand underneath my toothbrush as if I was going to brush my teeth, but I move my hand up and I'm going to pull my thumb from the top to the bottom, but I'm going to invert my hand so that I'll put it on the diagonal ever so slightly so that you can see what's happening. But ordinarily I would have my hand upright like this. And then when I pull my thumb from front to back across those bristles, I get that lovely fine distribution of colour. You also end up like a secret society with Spatter's thumb, because this will get tinted in whatever it is you're using. And let me show you those in the close-up. So that was with a smallish brush, but very liquid paint. That was with the smallish brush, but with not very liquid paint. So it really kind of dabbed off of it. So you get that finer version. And then this is the toothbrush version of things as well. So you can vary where it's going and how it's applied. And that's really important, isn't it? Because it's usually a bit of a final flourish. And so you want to be able to predict more or less how that is going to turn out on your piece of paper. So we've done speckling, we've done spattering. So the last thing to talk about is shredding. And shredding is something that I do a lot as well. You can do it with a pencil. You can do it with any sort of crayon. My favourite is to use something like an Inktense block. I'm going to be using my Neocolor crayon today. And you can do this dry and you can do this wet. Let's show you both of those things. I've got just a knife. You can have a grater, like a nutmeg grater. Derwent, the pencil company, used to produce this fabulous little grater, and then they discontinued them, which was very frustrating. I still have mine. If you ever see them, grab one of them, because they're really fine mesh. But you can also use a sieve. I've used a little tea strainer sieve before in my experiments. Get creative, go through your DIY kit or your kitchen. Just maybe you're not going to want it for cooking afterwards. So you can do it with a knife, and you can do it by literally shaving it down the length of whatever it is that you've decided to use. With Neocolor, you'll get quite big grains like that. Let's show you those in the close-up camera. So there they are. You can push them down with your finger. That's something that I quite like to do, to sort of fix them to the paper. And of course, you can take your spray bottle to them. Here's my fancy pants spray bottle. And if I give that a tiny bit of a spritz, and I get the spritz in the right place, you can see how you can diffuse that colour as well. But one thing that you can do, if I move this piece of paper over, is that you can, of course, wet your paper first. So if I use my spray bottle, and actually I'm just going to flatten that out a little bit with a brush so that it is a bit more evenly distributed. Let's use a bit of kitchen roll at the bottom, just so that I don't have a puddle. And then if I do exactly the same thing, but of course this time I'm shredding into a damp surface, you'll notice that the Neocolor shreds actually sort of fix themselves, which is mighty useful. And you get a little more kind of spread out of them. What I quite like to do, and you don't have to use your finger, you could use a cotton bud or anything, is to go back in and kind of tap them and agitate them a little bit so that you get this kind of interesting, this is great for rust, incidentally, where you're picking up that already dissolving bit of colour, then you get an interesting look to it. So let's do a Mahusive recap. You can see it in kind of greater quantity there. So we have Speckle, Spatter and Shred, all of which are texture making, mark making ways of adding things to your paintings without too much interference. So when we talk about deliberate marks or organic marks, very often in a painting, let's take you back to my old timer painting. These are all the deliberate marks, the things that are human made, the things that require shape and very deliberate shape. But you want to offset those with something that is more organic, because you want that kind of push-pull. You want hard edges, soft edges, lost edges, found edges, dark, light, and you want deliberate marks and you want organic marks. That's what's going to give your paintings the edge, so that they have a softness and a hard quality to them as well. So you can see here now where the grille on the car is, where I've had to be very deliberate with the way that I've painted it, but I've got much softer sections with my spatter. And then to recap, where we talked about the difference between the three things, the difference between, for me, this is just my kind of vocabulary that I use. Other artists will do the same thing, but call it something slightly different. So we've got speckle, which is the kind of larger, splashy kind of quality to it. Literally the flicking the paint from a distance away from it so that you get those really delicious marks occurring. You've got spatter, so that's not splatter, it's spatter. Spatter being a much finer version. You've got a little bit of it here, but you've got a much better demonstration of it here in terms of using fine brushes or toothbrushes or a way of getting it onto the paper so that you get that fine distribution. And then you've got the shredding, where you're literally physically putting parts of your colour, whether that be a pencil or a crayon or something similar, down onto the surface. So you've got a bigger texture, but it's there's no hierarchy of these. One isn't better than the other. It just depends on what it is that you are trying to describe. So I hope that information was useful to you. I do encourage you to take some time, if you can, to just experiment without needing for it to be a thing. Okay, I did an egg, but I think that's a nice manageable little thing that you can do. take a piece of paper, practice these techniques. They're not easy. They might be things that you think, well, crikey, it's a toothbrush. How hard can it be? But I can see from the chat that people have ended up with it in their faces or on the ceiling or on the dog or whatever it is. So Anne, I think it was saying that what she's taken away is the fact that I bashed the back of the toothbrush before applying it so that you don't get those drops. Try to navigate a way through that you can get a similar result, and then don't forget it. Make a note, however it is, or maybe photograph it, film it yourself, so that you remember this for the next time that you have something that is really, really textured, that you want to have that kind of interesting mark making involved. Now, Technique Tuesday continues towards Christmas. So our next meeting is November the 4th, and our theme for November is soft pastels, chalk pastels, however you want to describe them. Not the oil ones, the kind of very, very blendable kind. And Technique Tuesday, which of course is still free for you to access, talks about all the different kind of surfaces and accessories that you might want to consider for your pastels, because there is a bewildering array of them. And I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to take you through my favorites and what I use them for and why I use them, and offer you some kind of low grade alternatives to them as well. You don't always have to buy specific tools unless you like doing that. Now, this month, still jam-packed full of stuff. Next week, if you're watching this live, we have a Technique Tuesday tutorial, which is a pay-to-take-part type of tutorial, relatively inexpensive, looking at doing an old window with shutters, which carries on our Kingdom of Rust theme. So you can pop over to the website, to the Learning to Paint website, and there's the address there, www.learningtopaint, and you're very welcome to take part. You don't have to access it live. You can watch it on catch up. It happens on YouTube, and as long as you keep the link for that, then you have access to it for as long as you have that link. I do hope you can join me. And then of course we've got lots of tuition still to come in the month. The All Aboard artists are enjoying some content that I have pre-recorded for them, the old timer painting being one of them. But we're going to be meeting up to do a bell and a tap in our rusty techniques. And also I've got a big Saturday workshop coming up towards the end of the month, which you are welcome to take part in, which is called Weathered Waves, where we're looking at the juxtaposition of browns and blues and painting a really beautiful old boat. So if you want to join me for that, then please do. Thank you ever so much to everybody who took part in the live chat today. It's really lovely to see you, particularly those of you who get up either very late in the evening or very early in the morning to join me. And welcome to anybody who is new to the channel. Please don't forget to like what you've seen today and to hit the bell or to subscribe to the channel, because then you'll get a notification straight away. But it's been great to have you with me today. Take care, all of you, won't you? Keep up that creative experimenting, and I will catch up with you very soon. Bye, everybody. Bye.